Hi everyone, my name is Sam. I'm a neuroscientist at FAU Brain Institute. In this episode of Lab Bench Lessons, we are going to go over neurotransmission, or how your brain cells communicate. Neurons are made up of dendrites, a cell body or soma, an axon, and the axon terminal. The cell body of a neuron contains organelles, just like the other cells in your body. These organelles include the nucleus, which contains the cell's genetic material, and the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, just to name a few examples. The soma is also important for processing the signal received by the dendrites. The neuron contains a bunch of dendrites. These processes branch out of the cell body. Dendrites are responsible for receiving signals from other neurons or other stimulation in their environment. Also attached to the soma is the axon. This is the part of the neuron that carries the signal from another neuron. Some neurons have a myelin sheath on their axon. This fatty tissue insulates the axon like rubber wrapped along a copper wire. This allows your signal to travel as fast as possible, and the axon terminal is at the end of the axon. We will zoom into that later. When the first neuron, as we call a presynaptic neuron, receives the signal, which is at its dendrites, the signal travels down to the cell body. This signal is converted into an electrical signal at the axon hillock, the point where the axon touches the cell body. The electrical signal travels down the axon. This happens super fast, as quick as 2 milliseconds. And to put that in perspective, it takes about 40 milliseconds just to blink. That means your neurons fire electricity 200 times faster than you can blink. Once the electrical signal makes its way down the axon terminal, the electric signal is converted into a chemical one at the synapse. Let's take a closer look at this. Here we are looking at a synapse on a more magnified, zoomed-in level. The synapse is a physical space between neurons. It's a very, very small gap, sometimes called the synaptic cleft. How small, you ask? Well, a piece of paper is about 100,000 nanometers thick, and this gap is only 30 nanometers. The neuron on the top is our presynaptic neuron, because this neuron is sending the signal. Presynaptic meaning before the synapse. The postsynaptic neuron on the bottom is the one receiving the signal. In the axon terminal, there are vesicles which hold the chemical signals. We call these chemicals neurotransmitters. These vesicles are always loaded and waiting on the axon terminal, ready to release their contents at any moment. Some common neurotransmitters you may have heard are serotonin, the happy neurotransmitter, or dopamine, which is involved in reward and motivation. On the postsynaptic neuron's membrane, there are receptors for the neurotransmitters. These receptors will bind to the neurotransmitters once they have released into the synapse. They're going to be very specific for various neurotransmitters, so the dopamine receptor is only going to recognize the dopamine molecule. When the presynaptic neuron is stimulated from the electrical signal, it will release its neurotransmitters through diffusion. The neurotransmitters will disperse across the synaptic cleft. When the neurotransmitters bind to the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron, that will trigger an electrical signal in the postsynaptic neuron. The interplay between the electrical and chemical signaling is the basis of neurotransmission. Both are required for the neuron to pass along a message to one another. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and like to see other content related to neuroscience, please like and subscribe and follow Ascend on our multiple platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. For educator purposes, please use the link below.